I know that Tyson Fury kind of says a lot, and sometimes some of his words and sometimes some of the conversation that he creates or the buzz or maybe the little pats on the back he gives other fighters can get lost in some of the wild comments that he says. But when someone like Fury kind of says, and maybe as well, he's given a bit of a pat on the back to Bob Arum and helping him promote his fight when he was featured on those top ranked cards. But he was saying he gets all these fighters in for sparring, and he spars someone like Jared Anderson, and he says, "This guy is the future of the heavyweight division. This guy is going to be big." And your ears have to prick up when someone like Tyson Fury is saying that. But Jared Anderson has faltered now this weekend against Martin Bakole. He, of course, as well. We've been talking about weights. He was given some 20 or 30 pounds away, moved to Sugar Hill Steward, working with Tyson Fury, of course, as well, too. And you would have thought maybe, and I was kind of looking at this and thinking, can Jared Anderson replicate what Michael Hunter did? Move a lot, move a lot, move a lot to kind of keep Bakole moving and circling around and not set so he can't land those big punches. And Anderson was doing some okay work as he was looking to get his offense off, but Bakole for me looked like someone who knew what type of fighter he was, experienced, had those fights, had those ups and those downs, and knew where his strengths and weaknesses lie. And to not throw too much, not throw as much as he used to. The output is kind of shortened, so he's more meaningful with his shots, more accurate with his shots, and his punch selection was good. And he was able to find that punch selection to really kind of hurt and damage Jared Anderson there, who now has to go back to the drawing board if he is going to fulfill some of the potential that people say about him over in the US and from the heavyweights who have sparred him or have been in the ring with him. Were you expecting to see Anderson come through with the victory, or was this one that you thought Bakole was going to steamroll through like he did, Josh?
I in the build up to it, I was thinking this kind of does seem like it's Anderson's time, a statement victory. But then when I was talking to some of my mates about it, they were saying no, like Bacole's going to beat him. And I was like, I don't really know if I can see it. But when they both got in the ring, I thought Anderson was doing well in the first round until he got dropped. And I think after he got dropped, he kind of just never fully seemed to recover. He couldn't seem to fully stay out of the way of Bakole. Um, but what a statement that was for Bakole. He's gone out there and made the future of the heavyweight division supposedly not look great. I think the game plan that he had was perfect. I think he used his size perfectly. Um, and that puts Bakole right in the mix now. As for Jared Anderson, I think this loss, and some people might agree with me on this, some people might not. I think this loss will be one of his biggest blessings as he moves forward. I think one of the things that we've seen is I've not always been sure on Jared Anderson's mindset and his mentality. We've seen that video with Roy Jones Jr. where he was talking about pressure, and you can see him in tears about it at times, saying he's only young, he's only 23 at the time. And something about that just never, and I was never fully set on it after seeing that. I was kind of like, there'd been talks of him saying that, he feels a bit burnt out. He doesn't, it almost seemed like he was a bit bored. And I think that fight, if he'd won that fight, I think, don't get me wrong, I think he would have found a lot of love with the sport again because he would have seen so many opportunities come his way. But I think this defeat will take a lot of eyes off him for a little bit. And I think that pressure that he feels will be off his shoulders. I think he'll go back to the gym, get working again ahead of his next fight. And I think we could see, I'm not saying a different Jared Anderson, but a much happier and a much more version of him. They'll be enjoying it a lot more because I felt like with him, he almost felt like he was just doing it as a chore and that he had to do it. Whereas now that he gets to step back for a little bit, the eyes are going to go away from him. This could be his biggest blessing for him. That's how I see it.
DB Cooper One has highlighted here. Wow, that Bakole versus Anderson fight was a great watch. Anderson pissed his own future away. Only the Yanks thought Anderson would win. Just on that, for some of the out the ring antics, and you touched upon it with the conversation with Roy Jones Jr. Not antics in the way he reacted, because you can react the way you want, and if you're honest in your action, fair play to you. That's not to discredit him. Kind of becoming emotional in his responses to what Roy Jones Jr. was saying about pressure, but the kind of when you hear the stories of him being involved in high speed car chases and things of that nature, you really kind of worry as to what his focus is and what is hindering him outside the ring to set up the success inside the ring. Do you worry in that sort of sense when you feel like this could be a blessing for him, how he might deal with this loss, Josh?
It depends on the people he's got around him, I think. At the end of the day, you'll see him come back stronger if he has a good team of people around him who are going to keep him away from getting into things like that. 'Cause I know we've seen that before. Um, I was thinking more just boxing wise and being in the ring. I think now that he has had that defeat and he'll learn a lot from that loss. Um, but in the time that he takes away from the gym for let's say the next week or so or next couple of weeks, um, he seems like he's a bit of a family man. You know, one of the first things that he said when they gave him the opportunity to talk after the fight was that he just wants to get home to his daughter. Um, so hopefully he can stay out of trouble and not let the loss eat him too much. Where we do see him do these daft things like getting in these high speed chases and everything. Um, but in terms of his life in boxing and what he's doing in the gym and in the ring, I still feel this loss will do a lot for him if he stays out of trouble outside the ring and just stays disciplined and not getting himself involved in anything like what he has been.
Might that be a good move then for him? Because Sugar Hill is a former cop, I believe. So maybe Sugar Hill, not just the move being stylistically a move that Jared Anderson wanted, but someone that can help keep Jared Anderson on the straight and narrow. We'll wait and see as to see if that is the case. Before we move on to our next topic, and people are talking about it in the chat, matchmaking for Martin Bakole, Cloud Cafe is calling for Zhang versus Bakole. Bakole brought in through his one and only defeat back into the ring with him, that being Michael Hunter. But Bakole is, he said he welcomed that fight, but he's also kind of saying, look, I want that fight, but I feel like I'm a bit at a different type of level. I kind of want the Joseph Parker's, Caballeros, kind of the people that are in the Saudi mix so he can keep himself in the Saudi mix. Because right now, Michael Hunter isn't in the Saudi mix. If you could match make for Bakole right now, as people are making in the chat, what one fight would you like to see from Martin next?
I'd like to see Zhang. I think Bakole versus Zhang is a good fight. I'm seeing people in the chat obviously put other fights. Someone's just put Bakole versus Parker, but for me, I think Bakole versus Zhang. There's something about it. Just two man mountain heavyweights going against each other. Both two fighters who clearly possess a lot of power. Um, and I just think it's the perfect fight to make next. Obviously, I like the Parker fight as well, but I think Parker deserves a bigger opportunity than Bakole. I feel like if Bakole versus Parker was to get made, it would be more of the opportunity for Bakole over Parker. And I think Parker's at that stage after these last two wins that he's had that he deserves a big opportunity. So Zhang versus Bakole for me, I think that's the perfect fight to make.
Jumping back to the comments. Here we go. Never saw anything in Anderson. It was the easiest money I've made in a long time. Well, I'm glad to hear that you've won your bet. Bet responsibly, of course. I do kind of wonder though as to why the Anderson team decided on Bakole when they had options like Jermaine Franklin, who was also in the pipeline, who was a choice they could have made over having Bakole in the ring with him. And you would have thought maybe there would have been a lot more of an even type of fight there. So whose decision was it, the final decision to make, to choose Bakole over someone like a Franklin? Two good fights for sure, not in the perspective of Jared Anderson now that he's had the Bakole fight. But yeah, I you maybe feel that might be kicking himself that they didn't go for Jermaine Franklin. Thomas Bonin says Bakole dangerous man, fast hands, long reach, decent pop and a strong jab. That would being 208 pounds and seemingly improved gas tank. Although he sparked Makabu all his life, Southpaw doesn't phase him. You don't beat Bakole by standing in front of him, especially when he had a longer reach than you by 4 inches. Cloud Cafe, Bakole's a problem. He throws shots without overextending. Bakole will never be world champion due to his limitations, but he's a tough top 10 guy. What else have we got here? Reminding me how Eastern European boxers fight in amateurs mixed with Mexican style stance. Bakole's too static. There'll only be target practice for Zhang, let alone the elite guys like Usyk and Fury. But they did interview Michael Hunter, his former opponent. Michael Hunter said and went as far as to say that Martin Bakole would beat everyone in the heavyweight rankings except Alexander Usyk and accept himself as well in the rematch. So alluding to the fact that movers or people who can, move laterally, move around the ring well, will pose Bakole those problems, and everyone else who's a bit more static, who's a bit more upright, will fall short to Martin Bakole. Whether you think that's the case is another thing. We'll have to wait and see on that. Anderson doesn't have what it takes mentally. We would learn a lot about Bakole. Also, Anthony Joshua would give Bakole hell, just style-wise. You have to jab and move against Bakole. Anderson had a horrible game plan. I think I've read that one already. What else have we got here? 50-50 fight. Top Rank had enough of Anderson and made him sink or swim. Can't blame him. Top Rank do make their prospects prove themselves quicker than others. So, yeah, to be fair, off the back of Charles Martin, where do you really go? You have to have another step up. Or maybe you would argue there actually that probably Bakole was that right step as well too, or someone of that ilk as well. Also, Franklin would have been too. Agreed, Franklin would have been a much better fight for Anderson. I think his team probably thought Anderson would look good against Franklin, even though I think he'd win comfortably. Bakole has better stamina, and since Bakole's upper body stays up straight, he might negate Bakole's jab. If Bakole fights the first 4 rounds like Majimov, there'll be a problem on Zhang. Let's park the Bakole chat 2 and Anderson chat 2 for now, although good win for Martin Bakole. I'm very, very intrigued to see where he moves next to.